X-Men walk straight into our hearts all the way back in 2000. And I sure hope they continue their legacy with the way the MCU is planning to integrate them.
No mercy, all I got is working, never stop searching.
Now, we all know about guys like Deadpool and Wolverine who love making an entrance, but they're not the only ones who can flex a first impression.
Such a Juggernaut thing to say.
The TV region is going to prove that to you with its top 20 X-Men entrances in the movies. See, I told you it's not just Logan or Wade Wilson. We've got Colossus making a colossal entry here as well. Sure, he's also from the rejuvenated Deadpool franchise, but this version doesn't have a Russian accent, so we can definitely take him as a different interpretation of the character. This is when Stryker's agents invade the X-Mansion, and it's the first time we get to see how strong Colossus really is on the big screen. He just casually walks in with bullets being fired from him at all fronts, and as expected, the man doesn't even realize the puny humans are trying to hurt him with their cute little weapons. If you pay close attention, his breathing almost sounds as if his lungs are metal pipes or something like that. Which is a nice little detail to add because it makes Colossus look even more threatening to Stryker's men. Also, putting him forward as a secondary defender to Wolverine in this scene further cements Colossus as a reliable fighter, especially since we as the audience don't know much about him till this point. The thrashing he hands out to these assassins was a hilarious yet brilliant way to showcase his strength, and it really goes on to prove that the man has a heart of steel to complement his rough exterior. Maybe that's why Deadpool has such a huge man crush on him. Don't you just love it when a mutant makes a deceptive entrance? Mystique is pretty much the poster girl for such scenes, and this sequence over here kicks off her journey in the X-Men universe in the most captivating fashion. No, seriously, her surprise reveal here really slaps, or should I say kicks in this case? Disguising herself as Henry to keep Senator Kelly Ford was a genius move, and the conversation she has with the man right before transforming and revealing herself was a pristine moment. I can't even imagine what would be going on in Kelly's mind at this point. He must have gone like, oh crap, Henry's turning into a blue woman. Mystique's lines over here are pretty solid as well. By pointing out how people like Senator Kelly ruined her childhood, she presents a tough reality check to the old man who simply wants his own ideals to triumph over the basic needs of the human race. The kick to his face right after was also pretty cool and funny because they're pretty insulting. That too, with the senator being the recipient. They should have actually cast Quentin Tarantino in this role. I'm sure he wouldn't mind some feet on his face, if you know what I mean.
You know, people like you are the reason I was afraid to go to school as a child.
Hey, don't wake her yet. You know, the most perfect night I've had in a very long time.
Charles Xavier, aka Professor X, is one of the most beloved mutants from the X-Men franchise. He might be the same as Joe Swanson from Family Guy when it comes to his leg strength, but that doesn't take anything away from his legacy. However, he eventually meets his end when X-24 enters his room and basically stabs him to end his life. This is the first time we see the mutant clone, and his eerie resemblance to Logan is what makes this sequence all the more heartbreaking. Professor X must have been thinking that this is his only trustworthy ally coming to comfort him. However, all he gets is a stab to the chest, which means that the last thing Charles saw was his best friend taking his life. It's actually pretty tragic that the entrance of one character leads to the exit of another. But Logan was never about the PG life, so I guess we should have seen that one coming. The fact that Wolverine kept crying to Charles that it wasn't him right when we saw what happened made this even more tragic. But yeah, the way X-24's entrance is directed is pretty cool. The overall suspense and mystery surrounding him was perfectly executed here.
You best stay where you are, pal. I'm the law out here.
You all might know Agent Zero as the guy who gets violated by Logan later on in X-Men Origins, but the man does have a strong array of skills that shouldn't be ignored. Let's wind the clock back to one of the missions Logan and Stryker had undertaken back when they used to be buddies. To kick things off, we've got Agent Zero trying to surrender to the perimeter guard, and what follows right after is an impressive display of agility and shooting skills that actually sets him apart from other assassins. I've got to say, the way Agent Zero casually enters the zone is indicative of how comfortable he is pulling off such stunts. He totally totally owns the scene here, even though you've got other guys like Fred Dukes punching a freaking tank. I also wanted to point out something as a piece of film trivia for you. The actor playing Agent Zero, Daniel Henney, is of South Korean and Irish descent and is American by nationality. However, his character is actually German by ethnicity and nationality in the comics. In fact, Zero, who's better known as Maverick in the comics, is portrayed as a cold-hearted, ruthless marksman, which is the opposite to his comic book counterpart.
You still chewing on cheap cigars?
I'm in.
Welcome to the Brotherhood.
Okay, send them in.
Okay.
Okay, I give up.
Multiple Man isn't a name you've heard a lot of, unless you think of the actor Eric Dane, who was also in Euphoria, although as a creepy dad. Well, that's more towards Drake's preference, so let's focus on the cloning mutant from X-Men The Last Stand. His entrance is somewhat unique because he can only show himself after Magneto and his team free him. Even so, the fact that he just stepped down to the cage as multiple versions of himself was a nice way to introduce the character as well as his powers. Multiple Man doesn't have a lot to do in this film apart from the time he uses his clones to trick the human soldiers in the forest, but his chat with Magneto did give us glimpses of how he could operate as a rebel leader. Plus, in my opinion, I think the guy looks a lot like an evil Seth MacFarlane with superpowers. Also, this dude is incredibly powerful. What people don't realise is that he can send out his clones anywhere in the world, have them learn a language, martial arts or any other kind of skill. Then he can go and reabsorb them, and then he'll have those abilities in an instant. Imagine trying to fight this guy. He could literally clone 1 million copies of himself and totally destroy your butt. No, not in that way, okay? Get your minds out the gutter.
Okay, I give up.
They're coming for him.
You know what's better than one mutant making a dramatic scene? A whole bunch of X-Men showing up to save the day. The grand finale of X-Men The Last Stand had Magneto's Brotherhood coming in hot to wreak havoc, but our heroes had other plans in mind. Of course, the villains may have had a threatening entrance of their own, but they get overshadowed almost instantly. The X-Jet coming to the scene was obviously a touch of class, but then we get to see multiple mutants showing up in their battle stances. First, you've got Storm straight up electrocuting some of the ops with her lightning, almost as if she was filtering out the strong fighters from the weaker ones. Then you've got the best looking version of Beast assuming a ferocious battle stance that looks super badass. By the way, Kelsey Grammer really was an amazing casting choice for that role, you know. Now, Kitty Pryde and Iceman may not have had a very dramatic entrance, but it was still a decent showing. However, top marks undoubtedly go to Wolverine for sliding down with his claws and commanding his team right off the bat. Oh yeah, and I've also got to compliment John Powell, whose musical score totally enhances this moment.
Earth's mightiest hero who died defeating Thanos?
We should tell him the truth.
Our final name, Professor Charles Xavier.
That's not how our Strange died.
I still maintain that they totally wasted the Illuminati scene by having all of them destroyed by Wanda in an inexplicable display of power. But having said that, I'd be lying if I said I wasn't hyped to see Professor X in this film. The Marvel XX knew exactly what they were doing when they decided to give us a brief shot of the wheelchair, and to be honest with you, this is probably the reason why the film made over $9 million at the box office. Yeah, trust me, nobody wanted to see an evil Wanda take the limelight away from the title character. Anyway, seeing Professor X on the big screen again was a surreal moment for us, especially when that theme song started playing right before he enters the room. I'll admit that it was a bit weird to see him talk about Thanos, but you could tell that this was still the same Charles Xavier that we all know and love. The way he spoke to Dr. Strange about America Chavez really stated that he wanted to guide another gifted youngster on the right path. It's just a real shame they had to end him the way they did. Yeah, this movie hasn't aged well at all.
That's my boy.
Turns out Domino's a bit of a badass, and maybe, possibly mildly lucky.
Deadpool may be the start of his own movie, but Juggernaut is by far the start of this entire scene. You've got Wade Wilson and Cable hashing it out with some brutal moves, but then Juggernaut breaks out of his cage and shows everyone what real power's supposed to look like. Yeah, everybody's a gangster till the freaking Juggernaut punches a bridge in half. That really is some way to make an entrance, and the chaos that follows was a serious Avengers level threat. Bro just went like, hello, screw you guys. I actually like the way that they made this Juggernaut, because even though he is this absolute unit of a monster who goes on to tear Deadpool in half, he's still got a sense of duty in protecting Russell. It just goes to show that just because you're massive, it doesn't mean you can't be a father figure to a misguided kid. But yeah, the main selling point is definitely the punch and the tearing apart of Deadpool. Since Juggernaut was also voiced by Ryan Reynolds in this film, it's also kind of funny that he got angry with himself. I guess fear and loathing doesn't just happen in Las Vegas, eh?
Hey, big guy, the sun's getting real low.
Ah, shit, fuck. Laura!
Laura? Laura?
Stop shooting! She healed!
Now, it's not often that you get to see Wolverine with the look of abrupt pride on his face, and that made this sequence all the more valuable. We know that Laura is essentially Logan's kid, but you can't just prove that you're related to the coolest mutant of all time by blood. You prove it by spilling blood. This is exactly what we're treated to over here, as Laura rips into the guards with no mercy. The entrance is pretty cold with the way she casually tosses aside a decapitated head, but I guess that's why this entry is so high up on the list. The two claws coming out of her fists had us all wondering if she had a third claw due to her age, but then we saw the foot claw and we lost our minds. Even Wolverine must have gone like, hey, why didn't they give me one of those? Either way, the scene shows us that Laura is battle tested and she has no fear when it comes to slashing down her enemies. This is the proper definition of an anti-hero, and it calls for the perfect father-daughter moment. Kudos to Daphne Keane as well for putting off such a great performance. Nightcrawler is a pretty cool mutant, but did you know that Azazel is actually his biological father? Well, I know some genius at Marvel Comics ruined the whole thing and retconned Nightcrawler's origin in some 2023 issue, but I choose to ignore nonsense, so I'm going to stick with the OG parentage. Anyway, I'm not here to run one of those "you're not the father" shows. I want to talk about how cool Azazel looks while assassinating numerous CIA officers while trying to nab the young X-Men. His entrance is unbelievable, as he just randomly pops out of thin air and casually drops dozens of officers to their death with simple teleportation. The flame-like residue from his teleportations looks super badass, and his fighting skill are perfectly modelled on his powers. The fact that he looks like a demon helps his ominous aura, and the cleanup job he executes is nothing short of flawless. This man really knows how to mess around with his opponents, and it shows. Just look at how he toys with that final agent by dangling his own colleague with his tail. That's more savage than Kendrick Lamar destroying Drake with a hit song. If we're going to kick off the top 10, then we've got to do it in style. So I want to talk about how Pyro shows off his fire manipulation skills by burning that cigarette with extra seasoning. And I know it's not exactly an entrance, but it is an introduction to the character, so I guess it somewhat counts. Plus, we have Charles Xavier making a pretty cool entry the moment he freezes everyone in the airport. That was something of an unintended pun. This served as the inspiration to that airport scene in the Wolverine 10 years later, so it's always nice to spot an OG reference. Well, anyway, the main reason I want to highlight Pyro is because he's pretty nonchalant throughout this entire scene, whereas he's shown to be a bit of a hothead as the film progresses. Also, I know he's been a jerk to the dude with the cigarette, but maybe that's because he wants him to stop smoking. It's a pretty bad habit, you know?
It didn't attack the cells. It enhanced them.
Magneto was right in encouraging Mystique and Hank to accept their blue bodies. Maybe he saw Avatar and realised that this was the way to go. Unfortunately for Hank, He wanted to look more like those TikTok influencers, so he got himself the mutant equivalent of plastic surgery. However, bro got botched to a whole other level and completely turned into a literal beast. His entrance worked really well in the context of the scene because we know that he messed up, but we have no idea what he looks like now. Even when he presents himself to the X-Men, his reveal is done only at the very last moment so that we can truly take in the beast that was inside him the whole time. There's also the surprise attack on Eric, even though he didn't really mean to offend him, but that's just typical Gen Z behavior. Careful now, Hank. You should have been thankful that Magneto doesn't have a thing for getting choked. You'd probably have to deal with a lot of metal balls if that was the case.
Hank has been busy. Never looked better. Don't mock me. I wasn't.
I can't believe that one of Storm's best scenes ever was a deleted one. So, you remember the earlier entry where I spoke about the X-Men entering at the perfect time to counter the Brotherhood? Well, Storm's entry didn't just involve a few thunderbolts fired at weak mutants. She also summoned an entire wave to sweep away most of the opponents, but for some reasons, the editors thought that the film didn't need this scene. Are you kidding me? This is as brutal of a power display as the time she summoned those cyclones, and you choose not to involve it? This is a crime not just against Halle Berry, but also the X-Men fans who are dying to see more of Storm in this movie. Just look at the incredible power she possesses. The water splashing around everywhere adds so much more intensity to the final battle. Even Logan and Beast look more badass against this backdrop. The fact that this looks like a proper scene requiring minimal touch-ups proves that it was definitely going to be in the film, till some fool decided to cut it out. Say what you will about the X-Men Origins film, but you can't deny that they had the perfect castings for Sabretooth and, more importantly, Gambit. I still can't believe that this is the only version of the character we got to see from the Fox Marvel films, because there was a lot of hype surrounding the solo flick that was going to have Channing Tatum play the character. Anyway, there's no point crying over spilt milk, so let's take a look at how Gambit spills his cards against the Wolverine. His introduction is pretty straightforward, as he's seen in the most appropriate spot based off his idiosyncrasies. I mean, you'd imagine a guy named Gambit would like gambling, wouldn't he? Well, in this case, he has to play his cards right because he's up against the toughest X-Man there is. The powers he showcases here are quite impressive, as he's able to smash Logan through the wall using his cards. Of course, that kickstarts a completely different fight altogether, but Gambit makes a memorable impact here. It's nice to meet Ryan Reynolds, who plays an accurate version of Deadpool, isn't it? The Abomination from X-Men Origins will never compare to the OG assassin, and I think Fox pulled a rabbit out of the hat by making the same actor play him. His entrance is shown in the very first scene of his film as he introduces himself to us and goes on to provide one of the most epic opening sequences to any Marvel film. The bridge fight scene has so much going for it in terms of comedy and action, but most importantly, it reassures us that we're not going to be subjected to any nonsense like that bald mutation hybrid from 2009. This Deadpool knows the deal, and he makes sure to entertain us even though he's slicing up his opponents without a care in the world. This scene will forever be remembered for its comedic moments, and I really don't have a problem with that, because even I think that the action is a secondary factor right here.
Anyway, I got places to be, face to fix.
I'm looking for faces.
Have you seen this man? You guys want? I didn't do it.
I've been here all day.
So you're not afraid to show your powers?
Powers? What powers? What are you talking about?
This really is such a perfect concept for the Quicksilver character. He's nihilistic, bored, and carefree because he has a superpower that reduces the meaning of everything as he experiences all of it so slowly. Almost nothing is a threat to him, which gives him the same kind of persona as his dad. Now, when it comes to meeting folks like Charles Xavier, Beast, and Wolverine, anyone else would be shivering and scared for their life. But not Quicksilver though. The man is so fast that he managed to cross over into a different cinematic universe. Anyway, it was the perfect way to introduce the character because you can see the tricky Quickie not wasting any time at all by roasting the big three of the X-Men over their taste of vehicular transport. Yeah, I said big three without Magneto because I was referring to the good guys who don't want to wipe out all of humanity. Evan Peters better come back as Quicksilver when they actually decide to cast the MCU version of the character. I just can't see anyone else playing him this well.
We just need to talk to him.
We're not cops. Of course you're not cops. If you were cops, you wouldn't be driving a rental car. Are you FBI? No, you're not cops.
Kleptomaniac get to break into the Pentagon.
Say what you will about this film, you can't deny the fact that Jean Grey's heroic entrance to finish off Apocalypse was pretty badass. Unleashing her Phoenix powers like that to completely annihilate the mutant god was a brilliant execution because this dude was pretty much the Thanos of the 21st century Fox mutants. The thing that works best for Jean Grey over here is that nobody was really expecting her to show up at this time. Her entrance is so sudden and abrupt that it catches Apocalypse completely off guard. I mean, I'm not sure he would have been able to defeat the Phoenix Force even if he was prepared for her, but the overall visuals of the scene are dependent on Jean bamboozling the villain. Even the other mutants who were struggling against Apocalypse didn't expect this to happen, but I'm pretty sure none of them will be complaining about it. See, Star-Lord, this is how you defeat an enemy without ruining it for your teammates. Yep, the Wolverine has to get the right kind of coverage in this video, which is why his introduction to us lands at number 3. Rogue really is a lucky girl to have been able to see Logan fight live in front of her. From the moment he shows up to the time he knocks down his opponent, you know you've got yourself an alpha male who oozes testosterone more than the diddler oozes guilt. It was obviously great to see Hugh Jackman in the role that defined his career, but I also want to point out that mutants really have it tough, don't they? Bro's got a box for a living, even though he used to be carrying out secret operations for Stryker. I do wonder what his salary was as a freelance assassin. Well, it looks like we've got back-to-back entries from the OG X-Men flick because Magneto's train entrance is definitely a classic. Right from the moment he tears open the train, you know you're dealing with a certified legend. Eric steadily floating into the scene is perfectly complemented by the musical score and ominous backdrop. Then of course, you have the double violation of Wolverine, which is pretty remarkable if you consider how sassy he is in general. I mean, right from telling him he's not the subject of your interest, to casually tossing him aside like an unwanted Lego piece. Magneto totally owned this moment, and it kind of cemented him as a legacy character right from his very first appearance.
You must be Wolverine. You? My dear boy. Whoever said I wanted you?
It shouldn't be a surprise to you if you regularly watch my videos because the attack on the White House is a monumental moment in the history of X-Men films. Nightcrawler may have entered sneakily, but he makes his presence surely felt when he takes down all the guards without having to break a sweat. Just look at him go. He's like an amplified version of whatever Azazel had shown us in that earlier entry. I guess the son really is an improvement of the dad. I also like how Nightcrawler is usually against the whole idea of violence, but he does have the aptitude for it. It's the perfect introduction to an underrated character, and I must say, he's doing some good social work as well. I mean, he's basically telling America that their tax dollars are going to waste on security that can't even protect their president. Hope you liked the video. Please subscribe to the TV Regent, and here's another video that I know you're going to enjoy.